Good afternoon in New York, good evening in Ukraine and in Israel, and welcome whatever the time of day or night for all who are joining us from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining our Reparative Justice IV webinar on challenges of engaging, interviewing, and supporting child victim survivors, witnesses of war and terror. Continuing the International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma webinar series in collaboration with Project Sunflowers, today's webinar follows Reparative Justice I, which was a conceptual introduction to reparative justice, to key groups of traumatized victims, and 3, difficulties in listening and hearing traumatized victim survivors' witnesses, all answering the call for specialized training in reparative justice for professionals and others working with them. Today's webinar begins the in-depth focus on engaging specifically with child victim survivors, witnesses of the array of wars and terror's massive traumata to help heal and protect both child victim survivors, including family and community members, and the professionals themselves from potential re-traumatization of sharing traumatic experiences. Participants are urged to view the 3 earlier webinars of this series, so you have the full picture of our work. Before we begin, let me acknowledge with appreciation the contribution of Drs. Eva Hofmanska of Project Flower, Irina Frankova, chair of the ICMGLT Training Working Group, Professor Miriam Schiff of Jerusalem University, and Advisory Council member Amit Shrira from Bar-Ilan University, and our wonderful interpreters, Anya Stempkovska and Natalia Zaytz. Your moderator, I am a clinical psychologist, victimologist, pioneer traumatologist, and psychohistorian. I devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing, or trying to prevent, lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma, to ensuring victims' rights and optimal care, to rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. I conceive of history as it is lived now, not only as a set of dates and events in the past, but as it is shaping our identities and guiding our choices today. And of reparative justice is not only focusing on the outcome of justice, but equally on ensuring that the justice process itself is of a reparative relationship between the justice system and the victims. Our first speaker today is Mykola Kuleba, a Ukrainian statesman, children's rights advocate and humanitarian, Mykola pioneered Ukraine's children's rights movement and child welfare reforms and legislation to shift Ukraine from Soviet-era policies towards Western best practices. Served as commissioner of the President of Ukraine for Children's Rights from 2014 to 21, head of Kiev Children's Services 2006 to 14, co-founder of Ukraine Without Orphans Alliance, and co-founder head of Save Ukraine, a multidisciplinary organizations that repatriated 273 forcibly transferred Ukrainian children from Russia and the temporarily occupied territories. Our second speaker is Orna Dotan, an Israeli economist and business manager by training, first working in finance, banking, and communication. For the past 20 years, Orna focused on managing health systems, autism, and old age. Recently, of Kfar Ofrin, which is the first and largest autistic village in Israel. On October 10, 2023, she established the Resilience Unit at the Families Forum of the Abducted and Missing and manages Sderot Ezra Lemarpeh Habilitation Center that combines physical and mental rehabilitation. Orna is having a terrible cold. I hope nothing more serious. And somehow we will manage to have her speak or give voice to her ideas and knowledge. Our third speaker is Dr. Oksana Senatorova, a Ukrainian lawyer specializing in international humanitarian law, international criminal law, international human rights law, and transitional justice. Oksana is the director of the Research Center for Transitional Justice and associate professor at Yaroslav Mudry National Law University. A legal and policy advisor to Geneva Call, Ukraine, she has served as an expert for organizations including the Council of Europe, EU, and ICRC, and as advisor to several Ukrainian state bodies. The last speaker of today's webinar is Israeli Dr. Michelle Sloan, full professor at the Baruch Ivner School of Psychology, Reichman University. Michelle is laboratory director for the study of trauma and resilience and the former head of the Child Clinical Graduate Program at the School of Psychological Sciences in Tel Aviv University, my alma mater. Her research interests include trauma and post-traumatic reactions, resilience and its promotion in therapy, individual and group therapy for trauma exposure, and cross-cultural issues related to trauma and treatment. We have 2 hours for the webinar. Each of our panelists will speak for about 10 to 12 minutes. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor to questions or brief comments from the virtual audience. We will then conclude with quotes last words. Please use the chat function and we will do our best to respond to as many as we can. Feel free to direct your questions to a particular speaker, panelist, or to the full panel. You've heard already a mouthful, and we are beginning a very, very important webinar. I now have the pleasure to offer the screen to Mykola. Mykola, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It is a great privilege for me to participate in this event and to be with you together this Ukrainian evening. And it's thank God that we have no air raid alarm now, but who knows, because every minute our children and families can wait this air raid alarm and go to the basements. And I want to start from the statement that Russia commit genocide, annihilating Ukrainian identity, first of all, in Ukrainian children. And when you hear that Russian politician statements that they want denazification and demilitarization, it means they want to take all weapons from Ukraine and annihilate Ukrainian identity. They want to make us Russian. They want to force us to live in Soviet Union. And just today, we have returned a mother with 2 children who was forced to get Russian passports for herself and her children because otherwise they would not survive. But she proudly says to me that she managed to keep her Ukrainian passport in cases where the occupiers find your Ukrainian passport, they simply tear it up in front of you. Another orphan boy who we returned today told us that his greatest treasure and joy all this time was a hiding place where he hid chevrons of Ukrainian soldiers. He would secretly dig them out from time to time and look at them for a long time. And after he returned, he texted his friend to say that he was handing over his treasure to him. Of course, we will also return the friend. These guys have been in foster family, and this foster family received Russian passports and registered these children through the Russian legislation, but some kids from that family want to come back to Ukraine, and we provided special operation just to return this one child, and we are preparing our next special operation to return more children, not only from that families, but another children from orphanages. And Save Ukraine team has rescued now 282 children, including 72 orphans who had been forcibly deported or kidnapped and resided in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. Ukrainian children have witnessed not only ruthless shelling, rockets attacks, large-scale fires, explosion, destruction, killing, and violence. The war has stolen childhood, birthday celebrations, time to spend with their families and playing with friends from millions of children, deprived them of their own bed, a favorite cup, and pets. At the same time, children suffer from fear of death, the loss of their parents, sisters, brothers, destroyed homes and their hometowns, separation from their fathers who have to defend the country in the risk of the armed forces in the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, thousands of kilometers separating them from their grandparents and friends, and a hard lot of being immigrants in a foreign country. All this causes serious damage to the psychological health and well-being of Ukrainian children in the period from 27th of January 2022 to 1st February 2023, a survey was conducted which involved 2,000 women, mothers of children aged 3 up to 17 from all regions of Ukraine, except for the temporarily occupied territories of Crimea and Donbas, and the territories where at the time of conducting the survey where there was no Ukrainian mobile communication. According to the findings of the survey, 75 of Ukrainian children have the signs of psychotraumatization at the level of the body, sensations, perception of the world, and communication. World and communications. Beside Putin's ombudsman for children's rights, Maria Lvova-Belova reported on, it was maybe 6 months ago or more, on 744,000 Ukrainian children they had deported, while Ukraine managed to identify only 19,500 children and bring home only 388 of them. And biggest number of these kids have been returned by Save Ukraine team. I would like to share my experience of Save Ukraine's activities in saving children and families who had become victims of the Russo-Ukrainian war. First of all, it should be noted that the first occupation of certain territories of Ukraine took place 10 years ago in 2014 in Donbas region and Crimea. Children whom we are now returning after 10 years of occupation tell us that since the occupation of Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast in 2014, the development of these regions had stopped and everything had turned into a depressed, isolated area. And many children and families told us that Russian soldiers and local collaborators and its new authorities told them, guys, very soon USSR era will come back. And they believe that they will come back USSR legislation and atmosphere to that. It's their dream to return to these territories. And it means that all of this population will be forced to be a Soviet population. And it means that it's era of terrorism of Soviet state. We are also returning children who have been under occupation since 2022. These are the children had been hiding from invaders for the whole 2 years, and they particularly did not leave their houses. These are the children who saw their parents, friends, relatives, and neighbors being beaten and tortured. Their parents were denied conducting their church burial right due to the absence of Russian passport. And these are also those children who, despite being kept in punishment cells, intimidation, and other threats, were tearing to pieces the Russian birth certificates issued to them and raping down Russian flags. And I just, last week, when we returned one group of children, some of them from occupied territories, they told me that they've been witnesses when Russia occupied their territory. It was Russian tanks which just shut down several kids because they took sticks in their hands and showed these tanks that they are sticks and Russian just killed that children. I want to share with you some children's stories. But before, I want to tell you that both the words and the actions of Russian officials testified to the intention to forever separate Ukrainian children from their families, their national and ethnic group, and thereby destroy their Ukrainian identity. What is genocide? After the children's stories, we realized the policy, the annexation of territories for Russia will end with the couple assimilation of the occupied population. We have heard again and again about the clear and systematic destruction of Ukrainian identity by returned children. And children are forced to listen to Russian propaganda and false narratives about Ukrainian children, are forbidden to speak Ukrainian, and are forced to attend classes in Russian language, literature, and history. Children are forced to regularly listen to the Russian national anthem and sing it. Teenagers are recruited into Russian youth military movements, and there is evidence that thousands of these children are now soldiers fighting. They are young adults now, and they are Russian soldiers fighting against Ukraine because Russia instilled hatred towards Ukraine. Russians in the occupied territories of Kherson and Zaporizhia region search the homes of Ukrainians, enter houses with weapons in hands, and point at children looking for traces of something Ukrainian, symbols, books, photos, whatever. Sometimes during searches, military vehicles, it's Urals, with dozens of soldiers arrive, and snipers sits opposite the house being searched, aiming at this house. People who don't have a Russian passports are not provided with the medical assistance. One of the women we saved could not get a medical help for almost a month. When the pain became unbearable, she had to get a Russian passport, and only after that she was treated. Russian soldiers go around the houses checking whether the children go to a Russian school. If not, the parents are threatened with deprivation of parental rights and further placement of the children in boarding school. Children who were forced to go to Russian schools said the school is more like a military facility. None of the parents or relatives can enter the school territory. There are armed military in the school. It is forbidden to go outside during breaks. In some schools, even the windows cannot be open. If the children are just making noise, speaking in Ukrainian, the military comes and takes them somewhere. Teaching is conducted in Russian. Conversations, it's like Ukrainian special subject about the main thing every week. New children's books, 2023 edition, where history has already been rewritten. The soldiers who are in the schools are from Russia, and they change every month. Children from remote villages go to school by bus. For parents, it means putting the child on the bus every time and not knowing where he will be returned or deported, but there is no option to refuse. Special attention to children 16 up to 18 years old. They must be registered with the military commissariat from the age of 16. The class teacher informed the children that in the summer they would face a mandatory military junior camp. And after such patriotic camps, as is known, children are broken and they become pro-Russian through the huge Russian propaganda and indoctrination. Also, in some villages, the Russian military drive out with armored personnel carriers and tanks and shoot near houses so that shrapnel flies. Also, the Russians systematically destroyed houses so that Ukrainian armed forces have nowhere to hide during an offensive. They choose a house and destroyed it despite the people being inside it, especially in combat zones, or in that territories where it's close to combat zones. Russian soldiers in the occupied territories amuse themselves by rolling tanks down the street and shooting, making fun of people. They shoot at abandoned houses, at windows. Also, they can come to the house where the old grandmother lives and start shooting upwards, scaring the old woman. For them, it is entertainment. They like to shoot at animals and see how they are afraid. In general, Save Ukraine implements a comprehensive and trauma-informed care approach to assisting children and families who have become victims of war crimes of Russian Federation, which is implemented through the following stages. It is tracing, repatriation, recovery, and reintegration. In just very shortly, first stage is to search for children and establish contact with them. Save Ukraine team includes investigators who search for information in open and closed sources, children's social media accounts, website of occupation, and Russian authorities, and so on. They also communicate with relatives, friends, and neighbors of these families to get as much information as possible. For security reasons, I can tell you a lot about what we are doing and how we investigate this. And our second pillar is repatriation. It's like an underground railroad, what we built just to return children back. And unfortunately, I can tell you a lot about how we return these children, because very often it's like special operation to return a child back to Ukraine. And third, our stage is rehabilitation. And we have a special program in our 6 Hope and Healing Centers. It's a special center for families and children, for orphans, or for children who experience sexual abuse. It's a different program. It's psychologists who provide rehabilitation and case managers of these children. And we have 16 community centers for children and their families. We provide daily support, education, hot meals, trauma therapy, and deprogramming in these centers. And just now we started our to develop a special program for deprogramming children who've been indoctrinated. And our first step is implementation or to returning to normal life, or to we are working with the local communities how to return children to local communities, and we are working with the local communities all over Ukraine. We are building modular houses, and we place these houses in local communities in safer areas. We built more than 130 modular houses. There is accessible for children with disabilities. And we are working with the National Coordination Center. It's governmental center who are responsible for placing kids in the different type of families, foster families, for adoption. And because we are returning orphans, we very often to place these kids to Ukrainian foster families. And we are working with the National Center for Mental Health, and we have a special program with them for about providing trauma therapy for that kids who are in our program. Thank you very much. I understand it's very short time. I have a lot of things to discuss with you, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for everything you're doing for Ukraine, supporting us. And please, if you can share this information, and if you can involve more people, because I just come back from Washington, D.C., and it's a different planet for Ukraine. You know that. Yeah, it's true. I understand it. We are human being, and we understand that being in a peaceful country with a great society. Yeah, I feel your love, and I've been in different European countries and in Canada. I feel this support and love, but it's very hard to understand what happened in Ukraine. It's very hard to feel this pain of millions of children, especially who've been captured, who are hostages on the Russian land or on occupied territories. And we need your support, prayers, and actions to help return our children to their homes and return our families. And on the end, this war will continue until every child will come back home to Ukrainian land. Thank you so much.
Oh, Mikola, you know that at least our center is 100% with you, and will remain so. I'm very thankful that while you focused on the hostages and the particular challenges child hostages present to society and to our professions, you also gave the more global picture. And that would go very well with the rest of the panel. Let me, before I try to let Orna speak, if she can't, then Michelle, you would read her letter? I don't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if you sent it to my email.
I sent it to your email.
To the TAU email?
Oh God, it's one of those.
Yes. I'm sorry, I haven't got it here unless you, can you try and send it to my TAU email?
Okay. Yeah, I always have the same problem. You're absolutely right. I always send it to the other one. Orna, do you have Michelle's email? Orna, please show yourself. Woo-hoo.
You know what? Let me just give it to Robbie and maybe he
Orna,
can send it to me.
you don't have it. Miriam Schiff, would you email Orna Michelle's correct email so she can read what Orna cannot speak? Now, or Rabbi, you can do that too. You have Michelle's correct email. But maybe, Orna, you will begin before I ask you to begin. In solidarity, today is the 180th day of October 7. And indeed, here you see, Michelle, Orna, do you see? Actually, Miriam, can you read it? We can let you read it because Michelle will speak later. Robbie, could you put Miriam on, please?
I don't see her in the attendees right now. I will continue.
She is in the attendees, Miriam Schiff. I checked. I'm very sorry, our Ukrainian colleagues, but we are all in the middle of wars and people get sick, and we try our best to make sure. Yeah, Miriam is here. Robbie, please send or Shai, send Miriam the letter so she can read it and help Orna. Orna can barely speak. I tried this morning, it doesn't work. So Orna will focus on the abducted children from Israel. We do remember it. Yeah. Go ahead, Orna, try to say a few words and then Miriam will continue. You can't? You can't. Okay. Yeah, she's sick. Okay, but you will try for the question and answers maybe. Miriam, did you get it?
I didn't get anything. What did I need to get? I don't understand.
I would like you to read in English. Anna asked that we read in English this letter. You see
I
it?
don't have the letter, Joan.
I just sent it right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I sent it to you too, actually.
Okay, so this is in Hebrew, so you want me to translate on the spot? Okay. So it said there families.
Do your best to help Anna. Anna was going to speak about the work with the abducted children.
It
And
will be.
she sent me.
I understand, but it's hard for me to translate on the spot. And also it's very long. Yeah, okay. So actually, it's a letter to the victims of those who were kidnapped. Okay, so so it tells them, it tries to assist them. Okay, but I'm sorry, I can't translate on my.
That's okay. Do what you can.
Mm-hmm. It really normalized, all the trauma symptoms. So it really tried to acknowledge them, normalize them, and also describe the symptoms and try to recommend some interventions. Okay, so so what it says. At first, in the thinking, the cognitive, and the speaking area. So it said that something is really, that people, of the families of the victims are really thinking differently, and their behavior is different. And there might be symptoms like confusion, like a memory, loss of memory. The person can remember some of the things and not all of them. A lack of orientation in time and place. So this is another flashbacks and memories other than denials of the things that happened. Alertness, over verbalization. I mean, talking, non-stop talking. So these are all the symptoms in the cognitive area. And then it says on the emotional area, so it's the expectations that we really meet, hug and have a loving encounter, but some of them might feel really alignment, disconnected, very distant. They felt like the numbness, all these emotions, helplessness, lack of hope, irritation, angry, and also a lot of guilt because they returned and others were not. In the physical area, there might be symptoms like sleepless nights and nightmares, changes in the nutrition, changes in the walking and in movement, even in the voice, in the strength of voice, physical symptoms like panic and anxiety, over sweating, short breath, and things like that. And then the other symptoms are in the interpersonal area. So there might be like feelings of betrayal, okay, loss of faith. People feel that no one really were there for them. They were clinging to family members and to those who were who were kidnapped with them. So they feel very close to them, might be less close to other people. They might also be afraid or really keep distance from anyone else, even of those people who were very, very close to them before. They might feel reluctance from physical contact and from any emotional gesture. And then it says that that these symptoms can happen. All of them can occur. Part of them can occur. It doesn't have to be that all the symptoms are there. And it tried to normalize all these symptoms and try to say that these are really normal and this is the brave reactions, and this is the sole way to really express the strength, the survival mode, and the way of the soul to really try to digest all this suffer, all this miserably that happened. It also said that most of the hostages were recovered and they went back to normal life. And also even those who were post-traumatic still can really cope better with the right therapy. So, and then it goes to recommendation for coping. Do you want me to continue?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, so first of all, it's give them time. Really try to, and don't rush them, and don't really try to expose them to the media, to social connection, social encounters. Just give them the time, give them their own pace. They might be exhausted. They really need to try to adjust again, even to noise, to light, to encounters, and to the pace of life. So they really need to adjust to so many things and so many complex experiences. So we really need to respect, to be very tolerant to their own pace and their own pace of recovery. And also the other recommendation is don't don't correct people. Don't tell them, no, it didn't happen exactly like that. It happened a little bit different. No, don't correct them. Whatever they said, it's right. Another is try to activate the body and all the senses, good smells, the nature, good food, go to the sea, go to walking. These sometimes are very very helpful to cope with the situation, and really try to be very gentle with them and try to listen to what they need. Don't tell them what they need. Just really, really wait till see if you understand exactly what they need. The other recommendation is encourage them in every activity that they chose to do, and try to regain their control, because they lost the control. No one was under their control. So now everything, even a small thing that they can do that give them choice, that give them really their control back, it's important. Make their own decisions, even small ones. It's very important. And help them only when they are undecisive, when they don't know what to do. Other than that, let them do their own choices. Another recommendation is empower the strength, and be very happy with the fact that they came back. It doesn't matter how they came back, how do they feel, what a record they are. They came back. This is what important in that. Give them messages of strength. Don't give messages of pity, and then they will recover better. No one wants to feel like a victim, to feel like people are pitying him. Don't afraid to talk, and to try to establish together the coping strategies. It's okay to ask them, what do you want? How do they feel? What would be best for them? And then the last thing is that the family of their victims are also victims. They also had a lot of changes. Also they need the family members were really very much involved in the struggle to have them back. And so many of their family roles may have changed. For example, the little brother became like a real hero in all this struggle in all these demonstrations and all this all these activities to give them back. So remember that some of them the family dynamics have changed, and we might need to fix that in the future. And also just try to be patient with yourself. The family members were also had a very rough time. So really be passionate and compassionate for your own needs and your own feelings. Remember that you really don't need to know how to cope with this situation. This situation is insane, so no one really knows how to cope with it. So it's okay to find counseling, to find treatment, to find therapy with those therapists that are expert in trauma or in parenting counseling or any other family counseling. Because it's a very unique situation, and it's okay to get help. And then it says, of course, that we all hug you and really accept you, and we are all with you, and we really are very amazed by how do you cope with all these things, and we are ready to continue and help you, assist you in the future.
Thank you, Professor Schiff, so much for volunteering last minute to save the day. I know that Orna is totally thankful, and we are all extremely thankful. extremely important addition, considering the whole picture, the children, the families, the communities, including the humbling of psychotherapists who were not trained to do any of this work, and lawyers who were not trained to do any of this work. I promise you in the next webinar in the series, we also invited especially Professor Hamid Katz, who and colleagues who actually prepared the guidelines for receiving abducted children. Right now it's only in Hebrew. By next week it will be in English. And Mikola and Oksana and all of our beloved Ukrainian colleagues in the audience, you will all receive it will be on our website, available to everyone. And I hope we will do the same the other way around. When in Ukraine you develop anything that might be applicable to others, we will be translating it and having it. That's why we are the International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma. This is our work, and this is where we are all part of our family and community. Thank you, Orna, for a brilliant presentation. Thank you, Miriam, for conveying the brilliance in such a last minute. Yeah, my heroine, anyhow. As you know. And Oksana, let's listen to the experts in law now. You know, we are multidisciplinary and we want to look at things from all places. And here we are. We have the next two, the next two presentations will have PowerPoints, which would be helpful too. Go ahead. Wonderful. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear colleagues and friends. Dear Yael, we do appreciate your support, and we are delighted to be the part of this big family. And I hope that we could be helpful as well, because we have some our activities. Maybe you find them useful. I will speak English, and I see that there are lots of Ukrainian colleagues, Ukrainian friends among the attendees. I will be delighted to answer to your questions in Ukrainian. So please welcome any language. We have translation, and I will be delighted to answer Ukrainian if you would prefer. I will speak about deportation of children, and somehow will echo Mykola's some points, but maybe I will add some legal perspective, and I would also add some transitional justice recommendations in transitional justice domain. But let me first make a disclaimer that the views expressed during this session are my own and do not represent the views of any international organization or organizations, institutions I collaborate or I work in. All the thoughts are mine. I will speak about facts and figures of the existing situation in Ukraine. Mykola talk about them. Maybe you'll see them in presentation. It will be helpful for you. Then I will describe the prohibition of deportation, which exists in international humanitarian law and international criminal law, how to qualify deportation within the international criminal law, the avenues of criminal prosecution, and the last but not the least, the response to the deportation in Ukrainian transitional justice architecture. First of all, let me start with the qualification of the armed conflict, because sometimes our foreign colleagues misunderstand the existing conflict. They misinterpret it. They can define it as 2 or 3 separate armed conflicts. In fact, we have only one international armed conflict, which started with the invasion of Russian troops to Crimea in 2014 in February, no later than 20th of February 2014, which continued with the second phase with the invasion to Donbass, to Donetsk and Lugansk region, occupation of Donetsk and Lugansk region, and attempt of annexation, later some of those regions into 2022. And the third phase of this very conflict is the full-scale invasion. So we are describing deportation within the context of international armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And as for the deportation of children, actually the Russian Federation started deporting Ukrainian children in 2014. For example, the orphanage from the city Snizhne in Donetsk region was deported, orphans was deported in 2014, but they returned very quickly with the with some of help of international organizations, several international organizations. But since February 2022, Russia has deliberately created coercive conditions in which civilians in the temporary occupied territories have no choice but to go through or for the Russian Federation. Talking about the coercive conditions, I mean creation of humanitarian crisis in the captured cities, in Mariupol, bombing of food storages, residential areas, water, electricity stations, blocking of Ukrainian green corridors, forcing local population to flee to Russia. They explained that whole Ukrainian territory is occupied and there is hostilities on all the territory of Ukraine. So please go to Russia. People had no internet, had no connection, so they choose those way. And after that, you know that there were some filtration camps and children were taken, kidnapped actually in those situations as well. And of course, the direct shelling of Ukrainians trying to leave for the controlled territory of Ukraine. I will show you some pictures. For those who decided to live on their own, the route through Crimea was safer, but for children taken to Russia, there were no choice at all. They were evacuated forcibly. I will show you, this is this Mariupol residential area. Lots of children lost their parents in this situation, and they were taken by Russian authorities and deported to Russian Federation. This is Izum center in Kharkiv region, highly ruined by Russian Federation. And of course, in this situation, the same problem occurred. Here you see the torture cellar. There is a systematic and widespread practice of torturing of local population, local leaders, local Ukrainian specialists in Ukrainian history, in nature, anything else, cultural and intelligent leaders of the occupied territories. They were taken and tortured in such cellars. Here you see the convoy of 7 vehicles of civilians trying to escape from the occupied areas. All of them were killed, including 10 children. And you see that near Izum, more than 440 graves were found after the occupation, and civilians are in those graves. Lots of them were tortured. Almost 900 bodies were found in the region. So you see how awful was this coercive environment within the Russian occupation. And now numbers of deported citizens. According to UNHCR, by November 2022, 2.8 million of Ukrainians crossed the border. Of course, not all of them were deported, but you see the numbers. As for according to open sources existing in Russian Federation, the number of children taken from Ukraine to Russian Federation may be as high as more than 700,000 children. So you see the amount of children brought to Russian Federation. According to Ukrainian National Information Bureau, to the 1st of November, there were more than 45,000 children who were deported. But of course, this number was the previous number, not approved by the parents or some local authorities, etc. Here you see the site of Children of War web portal, and you see this is the today's number. 19,546 children were deported, and this number is supported. There is an evidence of their deportation existing, and of course the number of deportees is incomplete in this picture. We don't have access to the occupied territories. We do not know the whole picture, the whole numbers. Of course, it is much bigger. Of course, international organizations assessed this situation and provide their legal qualification in several reports, and not only international organizations, but Ukrainian national authorities. For example, in this special report of the Ukrainian Ombudsman, you can find this information for the date on the 31st of October. After that, the OSCE Moscow mechanism published the special report devoted to the deportation of children. And there are also lots of other international organizations who focused on this situation. Talking about patterns, how Ukrainian children could be deported. First way or modality is the situation when children have gone missing during shelling and hostilities, especially in large cities such as Mariupol. Large-scale deportation of orphans, transferring children with consent of parents to occupied territories, for example, from Kherson or Donetsk region for rehabilitation to Crimea with the permission of their parents, but after that, without permission, these children were deported to Krasnodar region, to other regions of Russian Federation, absolutely without permission. Another way is the using of filtration camps where children and parents are separated. And of course, children were taken and deported to Russian Federation without the permission of their parents. Killing, sometimes we face this situation, killing of parents and taking their children on purpose, and deprivation of parents' rights and at occupied territories, and again, deportation of those children. Adoption, Mykola mentioned this situation with adoption of Ukrainian children by agreement, and Maria Lvova-Belova, Children's Ombudsman of Russia, she explained in her several interviews that they agreed with Vladimir Putin to enact this special legal act allowing to give Russian citizenship to all children taken from Ukraine. And Putin insisted that not only those who have no citizenship, but all of them have to receive this citizenship. And this receiving this passportization, we call it, will give the opportunity to Russian authorities to suggest adoption of those kids. And according to Russian law, adopted children can, the parents who adopted children, foster families, they can change the names, change other dates, the date of birth, for example, etc. So you cannot find traces of the children deported from Ukraine because they changed everything to adopted children. Of course, UNICEF insists that adoption should never take place during such situations of crisis and armed conflicts. Parents should be, some attempts to find parents should be taken, and no way changes of their names. You see this legal act of Russian Federation. This deportation was planned and the whole government apparatus was involved. So it's not on occasion, it's not sporadic act, it is the whole system which was planned. Change of laws to allow passportization in fantastic level numbers, allowing illegal adoption and name changes, the brainwashing and identity change of children in camps, such like similar to Hitler-Jugend camps, it's called, and foster families as well. For example, Maria Lvova-Belova said she herself adopted a boy from Mariupol, and she said that at first he said nasty things about Putin, but after living in my family, he started loving Russia, loving Putin, and sing Russian anthem. What is this? Of course, it is the brainwashing of those children. And I will show you the example that she just thanked. You see the picture where she met with Putin, Maria Lvova-Belova, and thanked him that it's all due to Vladimir Putin. All this happens. And now you see, when you go to Russian sites, local sites, you can find information like announcement. Please come and take Ukrainian children taken from Donetsk region. You can adopt them. Just pick up, choose, and adopt them. And the photo of those children. It's easy for Russians to go and adopt children. Even the photo provided to just to choose anyone. Like, I'm sorry, like pets. You can come and choose their children. They have parents. Even those who came from orphanages, they can have parents, they can have relatives. No attempts to find their relatives, no information provided about where they are. And now I show you the pictures of this Hitler-Jugend. This is Junarmia. It's called Junarmia, so something like youth army. And this is quite popular youth organization where Ukrainian deported children are forced to participate. They cannot avoid this participation, this attendance of this Junarmia. You see that even young children are militarized. And not only that, these children, but from in kindergarten as well. They are familiar with weapons. They have some lessons how to use it. I don't know the reason why this amount, almost 20,000 of children, but of course the number is much bigger, why they were taken, possibly for enlisting to Russian army, for mobilization to Russian army later. This is Maria Lvova-Belova trying to educate children in these special camps. So all this is going on in Russia. How to qualify it according to international humanitarian law? We see that Article 49 of Geneva Convention, I will be very brief in this legal domain, because I know that our audience are not lawyers, so I will try to speak very briefly in this regard. So according to Article 49, evacuation is allowed, but deportation, forcible deportation, is prohibited. How should we differentiate? Because Russians, they say that it was an evacuation. We tried to save those children taken to Russian Federation. First of all, according to the commentary, ICRC commentary to this very Article 49 of the Geneva Convention 4, there is only one reason for evacuation. If another party, in this case, Ukrainian party, is bombing actively, intensively bombing the occupied territory. But there were no bombardment from from Ukrainian side of the territories which were immediately occupied after the 24th of February. They were going through, I'm from Kharkiv, they were in Kharkiv in the first very day, because we are 30 kilometers from Russian border, and they occupied all the region. And they started this deportation immediately, and they deported children from all the occupied territories without any risk of bombardment of those territories. Another demand from the Article 49 that all people who were evacuated should be returned. No returning from Russian side. All people who were evacuated, as they say, should be included in the list, which will be transported to international organizations and to Ukrainian authorities. No list was sent to Ukrainian authorities. No international organization had any access to to those people who were deported, adults and children, especially children. No access at all, no information. Who are they? Where are they? Nothing. According to international criminal law, deportation could be qualified as war crime, as crime against humanity, and as genocide. And these crimes are not mutually exclusive. One act could be qualified as both war crime and crime against humanity. Talking about forced deportation, how do we understand forced? Force doesn't mean physical force, enforcement, physical force. It could be the creation of this coercive environment, which I described you in the beginning of my presentation. So definitely this coercive environment existed, and Russians used this coercive environment to deport people from the territory. And lots of international organizations and non-governmental organizations, they insisted that in the first months of invasion, and this coercive environment was created, and this environment created this crime. Deportation as genocide. Indeed, according to Article 6E from the Rome Statute, the transfer of children from one national group, in this case, we have Ukrainian national group, not ethnic, racial, or religious, because the children who were deported and adults who were deported could have they could come from different ethnic groups, but definitely all of them are Ukrainian nationals. So we are talking about Ukrainian national group. This transfer of Ukrainian children, nationals of Ukraine, to Russian Federation was committed with the intent to destroy the group of Ukrainians as such. And how could we prove it? We should observe and provide the evidence of the broader pattern of committing the similar conduct. For example, the killing of national local leaders, the torturing of population of the occupied territories, destruction of any like books on history, different TV broadcasts with MPs, members of the Russian parliament, proclaiming that the necessity to kill 2 million of Ukrainians exists because all of them are Nazis. We need to denazify Ukrainians, so it just need to kill, and they speak it, I quote, 2 million of Ukrainians. The whole system of similar conduct proving the genocidal intent of Russian authorities, and in this case, the same. For example, the representative of Venezuela during the creation of the Genocide Convention 1948 said that the forced transfer of children to a group where they will receive an education different from that their own group, and where they will have new customs and possibly a new language, is in practice the destruction of this group. And the future of Ukrainians definitely depends on the generation of children. So we see this situation in this case. As for the scale, sometimes we lawyers have this conversation about the scale, but according to International Court of Justice, it is enough to commit to destroy, to intend to destroy the group within a limited geographical area. And this limited geographical area is the occupied territories of Ukraine, occupied by Russian Federation. And the significance is huge. The deportation of children from the occupied regions is very huge in scale. Avenues of prosecution. We prosecute this crime in domestic jurisdiction in Ukraine. We prosecute according to Article 438 of Criminal Code. It is war crimes, but currently those crimes which were qualified as war crimes are reviewed on the genocidal intent, and these crimes will be prosecuted as genocide. Unfortunately, we don't have the criminalization of crimes against humanity. We don't have separate article on crimes against humanity. So lots of crimes are qualified as war crimes currently. And of course, I insist that there is the universal principle. So lots of countries can prosecute the perpetrators as well. And they indeed are doing this. 13 countries, European countries, are prosecuting. I don't have, unfortunately, the information concerning deportation, but they are prosecuting war crimes and will go further. We have 125, more than 125,000 criminal proceedings on war crimes. This is a huge amount. And frankly speaking, we need to lower expectations of Ukrainians because currently the expectations for the desired criminal prosecution is high. But unfortunately, we have to be aware that it's impossible to prosecute everyone in this situation. And we have to concentrate on those who committed the biggest atrocities. And of course, deportation of children should be the focus of this criminal prosecution. Currently, not currently, on the 31st of January 2023, there were 90 criminal cases on deportation. Today, the amount is bigger. The ICC is also prosecuting for deportation of Ukrainian children. Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova are prosecuted, and there are arrest warrants issued by the ICC. And according to Article 27 of the ICC, of the Rome Statute, ICC Rome Statute, there are no immunities for Putin, no personal, no functional immunities, nothing. Of course, this is an achievement because in 124 countries, Putin should be arrested and surrendered to the court. These countries are obliged, they are the member countries to the ICC, the parties to the Rome Statute, so they are obliged to surrender Vladimir Putin. But there are many risks in this domain as well, unfortunately. And there are no police forces who can arrest him in Russian Federation. National steps. Eva asked a question. If I may, I will answer her question as well. We have unified register of deported persons. It was enacted, the legal act prescribing this register was enacted, but the process is somehow going slowly. So we don't have, maybe Mykola will add something to my presentation, maybe he knows more, but as to my knowledge, there is no such register which we have an access to, or we can be familiar with this register. The Child Rights Protection Center was created in May 2023, and the program Bring Kids Back has been launched. This program is aimed on different spheres of protection of children, not only on deported children, but also mental health, psychological health, etc., and criminal and protection of children within the criminal procedure as well. As for TJ, transitional justice in Ukrainian context, in 2019, the Legal Reform Commission was created. I'm the member of this Legal Reform Commission, and this commission developed the transitional justice concept or framework for Ukraine. And of course, this context, Ukrainian context, is sui generis, is unique, because we try to apply transitional justice within the international, not internal armed conflict. And this armed conflict is ongoing, so it's very difficult to implement transitional justice. But concerning 4 pillars of transitional justice, first pillar, which we decided is the reparation to victims of armed conflict. We created the victim-centered transitional justice reform and concept. I will speak about these reparations as well. Yesterday, the register for reparations was launched, and maybe it helps a bit. Second pillar is prosecutions, and you see that we are very productive in this sphere. Lots of criminal proceedings, and we are going further. Ensuring the right to know the truth about the armed conflict, and this is very important. We need to speak about deportation of children, because I'm sure that foreigners, sometimes they are shocked with this information, which I am sure all Ukrainian attendees in this webinar know. quite aware of, but foreigners are not aware of this situation. And the fourth is institutional reform and measures to prevent the reoccurrence. And here we can speak about institutional reforms in the deoccupied territories and creation of some opportunities for return children to come back to Ukrainian society with less trauma, without this, with re-traumatization. Unfortunately, there is no definition of the victim in Ukrainian legislation, and it is creating now. I hope it will be created, the register of victims will be created, and the special focus will be on those who suffered from the serious violations of human rights and international human rights law. So those who were deported as well, they should receive first reparation, prioritized reparation, not those who lost their property, but those who suffered a lot in this situation of armed conflict. Another challenge which exists, sometimes we hear that, especially from the occupied territories, we hear that Russian propaganda says to those parents who signed permission for the rehabilitation of their children in Crimea, that Ukrainian authorities will prosecute them for collaboration with occupied territories. Indeed, we have this article. Unfortunately, it's not the best article in criminal code. It's highly criticized by government, by non-governmental human rights activists and authorities, even national authorities. So it will be changed. But I want to say that no parents should be prosecuted, and they are not there. There is no risk of prosecution of parents who sign this permission. They are victims of this crime. They are victims of deportation. Parents are victims. Their children are victims. They are not somebody who committed the crimes. And recommendations to national authorities and national non-governmental organizations. First of all, we need to develop effective measures to return deported children. I know that to say it is easier than to do it, and Nicola is doing the fantastic job within his non-governmental organization. We need to restore lost documents, to improve the process of issuing documents to children born in temporary occupied territories since February 2022, even those who are now in Russian Federation. Develop the definition of victims, the policy of reparations to the victims of deportation, the unified protocol of returning Ukrainian children and their rehabilitations, both physical and mental, psychological. So we need this unified protocol. Develop the instruments of medical, financial, legal, and psychological support to parents, relatives of deported children, as well as deported adults returning to Ukraine. Develop special educational programs for returning from Russia children and children from the deoccupied territories, avoiding the pressure of re-education. We should not do as Russia did, like now all which you heard, all information you heard is wrong, please do this. Of course not. We should create some children hubs where they can just play. I'm absolutely adore Orna's words that she said, she mentioned that this psychological support is very in need for Ukrainian children, not education in this like paternalistic domain, but trying to do what they want, give them freedom to do what they want, and they will feel it. They need to feel love, care, support, and no re-education in this like strict sense of education. Of course, international support we need in this sphere where foreign countries can take Ukrainian children. We can like implement some programs of exchange of children in the families. They can live in some families abroad. They can adopt, these families can take for a while, for a week or two, foreign children, and they can communicate, they can feel this linkage to the world. And as for international organizations,
Yeah.
yes, this is my last slide. International organizations and partner countries exert pressure on Russia through international and national prosecution, facilitate the involvement of international organizations and partner countries in the identification and return of persons deported to Russia. But the most important is facilitate the involvement of local non-governmental organizations in Russian Federation. I know that there are some who help, who provide information to this portal Children of War, to Ukrainian non-governmental organizations. So we need to facilitate this help of non-governmental organizations. We should work on grassroots level and create, of course, special programs for children returning from Russian Federation. Thank you very much. I will be
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oksana. We ran way over time, but everyone here wants to give everything, which is a measure of the goodness of your hearts and expertise. Let me just share with you that we do have quite a few lawyers in the audience. We always have a multidisciplinary audience. Also, I happen to be the only person alive today who participated in creating all victims' rights instruments in international law. And we have done the victim declaration. We have worked on all of that. And very few of us are still alive. So perhaps it's a good time to take that not just as a recommendation, but as a call for a special expert meeting on that. Without the definition, you won't go anywhere. But also to mention that actually, as we speak, here in New York at the UN, we have a meeting on the Convention of Crimes Against Humanity. And a lot of the issues you raised, we've been talking about this week and continue for the rest of the week. It's very, may I comment as a psychologist that one of the reasons I did not stop anyone is there's something about the work with children that evokes in all of us both the need to, the protective need and the caring need to take care of them, to ensure that they're okay, that their future is secure. On the other hand, and the other side of the coin, of course, is to feel guilty when we don't. And we don't do everything. So let's take that as just a side comment to explain why I feel laxer about the schedule. Because I also care an awful lot. And to also add that we will continue this series. You do know that Nigerian children are being abducted. You know, Yazidi children are being abducted. We have working groups on many of these groups in the center. So we will continue to do these webinars and learn from each other and perhaps organize a meeting on this issue in particular too. But because I think we have the questions, but we need a lot of the work for the answers. We now have, and Michelle, I hope you won't run over the 3 o'clock time because we really need to have time for some discussion and question and answer from the audience. But it shouldn't be your responsibility. You just disappeared. Oh, here you are. Good.
No, I'm here.
Here you are. The floor is yours, and Michelle will give the global picture. Go ahead, my dear.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Hang on a sec. Oh. Robbie, would you like to just share my screen for me? Oh, here I am. Okay, hang on, I'm fine. Okay. Sorry, one moment. I'll just get this right. Okay. So I'll just introduce myself very briefly. I'm Michelle Sloan, Professor of Psychology at Reichman University in Israel. And as you can probably tell from my accent, sometimes you can't tell because it's a bit tricky. I'm South African. I was born and brought up in South Africa. And I lived there through the apartheid, the entire apartheid system, right up to the point of, with all the violent protests, right up to the point of the dissolution of apartheid. And then I came to Israel in the year 2000, exactly as the Second Intifada broke out. So I'm no stranger to trauma and children in war and the effects of children growing up in armed conflict, war, and terrorism. I'm going to be speaking more generally about, I'm also a clinical psychologist, I'm going to be speaking more generally about the effects of exposure to war, armed conflict, and terrorism on children, and then give a little specific focus to the Israeli context. So if you just have a look at this map from 2022, this is a map of the global wars in the world today and armed conflict. The darker areas are the more severe conflicts. And as you can see, approximately 96 million children live in high intensity conflict areas today. Lest we forget, and we cannot forget after the presentations until now, but lest we forget, behind all these conflicts and all the words, these are the faces of some of the children that are exposed to the horrors that we've heard about. Okay, I'm just going to try and move this a bit. So in the Israeli context, I've been studying the effects of armed conflict on children for the past 20 years, both direct exposure, missile attacks, terrorism, the intifadas, several operations, children in the north of the country, children in the south of the country, and also indirect exposure via the media. It's not very well known that children become secondarily traumatized via the media. And today there's an absolute revolution, outburst of it with all the different kinds of social media. In order to examine these issues, I developed what I called an armed conflict and war exposure scale. It's a little questionnaire about the kinds of experiences that children have had, children or adolescents, even adults, because this enables me to quantify the severity of exposure. There's so many different types of trauma. Not everybody experiences the same thing. Even when a missile falls on a settlement on Sderot, not everybody experiences the same event. Some children might have had their house destroyed. Some children might have lost loved ones. Some children might not have been at home. And this would enable me to examine the relationship between exposure, the severity of exposure, and outcomes for the children. So as you can see, we would assume that there would be a direct relationship between the severity of the armed conflict and war exposure and post-traumatic stress disorders or post-traumatic stress symptoms, where not all the categories of post-traumatic stress disorder are filled. So just to tell you what post-traumatic stress disorder is, there are essentially 4 categories of symptoms that define this disorder, and we've heard a lot about it from Michela's and from Orna's presentation. Firstly, you'd have intrusion symptoms, which are thoughts and feelings that intrude incessantly into the child's mind uncontrollably, such as nightmares, flashbacks, memories all the time of their experiences, avoidance. They try and avoid certain people who could trigger off a memory, places, thoughts, and this causes a lot of behavioral difficulties, a lot of behavioral disturbances as well. For example, one of the ways of avoiding thoughts is to distract yourself with something else. So children distract themselves with counting or thinking about other things or not stepping on the cracks on the sidewalk, which we would call obsessive compulsive behavior. Very, very, very frequent as an outcome of exposure to armed conflict and terrorism events. Obviously, negative mood, depression, which I'll have something to say about later. And as I think Orna mentioned, self-blame. Why was I saved and my family was killed? Why didn't I do more to help others? And finally, hyperarousal. The children are walking around in a state of hypervigilance, looking out for danger, very irritable, and unable to relax and to rest. So even though the common notion is that exposure to armed conflict and war and terrorism will lead to post-traumatic disorder and post-traumatic symptoms, a lot of my research has shown that actually you can have the whole array of psychological and psychiatric symptoms as a result of exposure to these horrific events. For example, this is now data that I have since the 7th of October, but this is true for previously to the 7th of October. For example, children are extremely anxious, suffering from a whole gamut of anxiety disorders, panic attacks, can't breathe, scared of going in elevators, scared of going outside, scared of leaving their parents, separation anxiety. At the moment, just as the tiniest example, because I have so many patients that it's unbelievable, but as a tiny example, I'm at the moment treating a little girl of 10 who, with a sudden onset, she was actually evacuated. They were evacuated from the north, which is being bombarded at the moment. And they went through a whole series of temporary residences until they were finally given a little apartment in the middle of, in the central Israel. And she's finally started school after months that she wasn't at school. She finally started school. Suddenly, with sudden onset, she started screaming in the middle of the class, ran to the toilet, to the bathroom, crying that she's going to die, that somebody's going to kill her. She's been put even onto medication, which is absolutely terrible to be put onto psychiatric medication at this age. And she is the smallest example of what is happening in the country at the moment with the children. There is approximately a waiting list of 1 year to get mental health treatment, even though they are pushing through specialization and certification of therapists. The waiting list is absolutely astronomical. The children are suffering from phobias. They're scared to go into elevators, scared to go into dark places, scared of going outside, scared of being alone inside. Obviously, depression, very high rates of depression, aggressiveness, temper tantrums, banging their heads on the wall, shouting, screaming, falling on the floor and hitting themselves on the floor, sleeping disorders, children, it's difficult to explain, but the quantity, the number of children that are refused to sleep in their bed, they are sleeping under their bed. They scream at night. They are having nightmares, sleepwalking, and unfortunately also a lot of regressive behavior. In other words, return to earlier developmental states, such as bedwetting, and eating disorders. Children are not eating, becoming actually anorexic, or binge eating and becoming obese, looking to eating as a kind of relief for their anxiety. To have a look at this, this is actually previously, prior to 710, because we don't have norms for children in Israel after 710 yet. We don't have that data yet. This is a brief symptom inventory questionnaire which examines, which gives the frequency of four symptom scales: anxiety, depression, somatization, and hostility. Prior to 710, these are the American norms, these are the US norms, these are the Israeli norms. That is absolutely, children should not have any of these symptoms. It should be naught throughout. These are studies that I've done now since 710. If you have a look at the frequency, the percentages of risk-taking behaviors among adolescents since 710 have absolutely skyrocketed. You see that truancy, 68% of the children that I did the survey on, about 3,000 children, are not going to school. 61% are abusing alcohol. 52% substance abuse. Almost all the children, all the adolescents are smoking. High rates of juvenile delinquency, stealing, dangerous driving, and a lot of children are carrying weapons. This is in the past 2 weeks, a tiny study that I did, having a look at suicidal tendencies. We surveyed children in 8 schools, adolescents from the age of 15 to 18 in grades 10 to 12, with the number of participants we had is 3,500, representative of different places in the country. As you can see here, 12%, 13% of children have suicidal ideation. 6.7% have actually got a plan. They have the intent to, God forbid, commit suicide. And 5.5% have actually made suicidal attempts. This is, I mean, these are catastrophic figures. However, there is some good news, and that is that although we expect to have a direct relationship between the severity of the exposure and the severity of all these outcomes that I've been speaking about, we actually find, and it's common knowledge, that there are many individual differences in the way children, adolescents, and adults respond to their life experiences. No matter how terrible, how tragic, how catastrophic, some people, children as well, seem to be able to kind of work their way through it, negotiate it. In other words, they have some form of resilience. Not all children will have the most severe outcomes, even from the most severe exposure, which suggests that there must be some kind of moderating factors something that moderates between the exposure and the outcome. So this is the model of my research. I would call these moderating factors either resilience or risk factors. In other words, if something like self-esteem was indeed a moderating factor, you would find that those children that have high levels of self-esteem would do better, given the exposure, would do better on the psychological outcome in children who have low self-esteem. And I've spent many years attempting to map out what are the resilience factors that moderate between war, armed conflict, and terrorism exposure, and all these different outcomes. And I was able to categorize my findings of these moderating factors into 3 categories. Personal factors, which are personal tendencies or traits, such as, for example, children who are good at problem solving or do much better, they are more resilient than children who are not good at problem solving. Children who have a good environment of support, social support, and the support is accessible to them and appropriate to their needs, do much better than children who do not have this environment of support. Then we have the family category, in which I found that cohesive families who have low conflict, are more attentive to their children, and more allowing of kind of what we would think of as non-normative behaviors in non-normative circumstances. If they're more permissive, that is very valuable to children and actually assume a resilience factor. And then we have community and societal structure, such as welfare, mental health services, and many others, which over the years, unfortunately, out of need, Israel has actually become very focused on establishing and polishing so that, God forbid, if there is a terrorist attack or anything, the schools will open, the schools will provide support, teachers will call the children at home, all the community services will open up. Doesn't matter what time of day it is, what time of night it is, they will become available to the community. So, why is all this so important? Because if we want to conduct effective therapeutic interventions, we have to be able to diagnose what was the child exposed to, what are their symptoms, what are their difficulties and disorders. And as you can see, it's much more, much broader than just post-traumatic stress disorder, a whole gamut of anxieties. The most conventional therapies that we tend to use for smaller children is play therapy. However, if we have a good diagnosis in hand, then we're able to kind of structure therapies which are more symptom specific to treat anxiety, to treat depression, to treat phobias. We might use different kinds of therapies for each of these different symptoms. And obviously family therapy, which derives directly from what I was talking about with resilience factors, because the family is of crucial importance in stabilizing the child, being attentive to the child. I have to say on a personal note that I'm absolutely, I'm overwhelmed by the tragedy of what is happening in the Ukraine, because children, it sounds to me, are essentially stripped of all these possibilities to enhance their resilience. And also, we are extending therapeutic interventions way beyond personal, individual therapies. We can no longer afford the luxury of individual therapies. And I would even say it's not even a luxury, it's a necessity now that we have to reach as many children as possible, masses of children. I've been developing a whole set of interventions that are conducted in the school, and I've tested their effectiveness by measuring children's symptom levels and disturbances and disorders before employing the intervention in the school and afterwards, in schools that received the intervention and in schools that did not, that were in the control condition. And I found extremely effective interventions, and the children have responded far better in the schools that received the interventions than those that did not. Basically, a lot of these interventions are based on actually making the school staff first responders. As something occurs, or if a child is traumatized, the schools open, the teachers are trained to be attentive to disorders, to difficulties that the children might be having. It might be attention disorders, it might be frustration, it might be the inability to sit still, running out of the classroom, irritability. And I found that in the schools are basically, they take a central role in therapeutic interventions for children. In fact, even more effective than individual therapy, because teachers are familiar with the children, and the children find themselves in familiar surroundings. They've got a return to routine, they're amongst their peers, and they have a general protective environment. So let me end, because I was asked to be concise, and I was. Let me end with a statement from Graça Machel, who wrote the seminal UN report on the impact of armed conflict on children. She was also a minister in the Mozambican government, and the first wife of Nelson Mandela, very close to my heart. And she said, and this is something that I think has resonated throughout all the talks today, that the impact of armed conflict on children must actually be everyone's concern and everyone's responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle, for making things simple somewhat, but they're not really. But it occurred to me, could you remove the PowerPoints, please?
Yes, I'm trying to. I don't know why I'm not actually managing. Hang on a sec.
So we can see everybody and have at least a brief
Oh, stop
dialogue.
share. There we go. There we go. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Wonderful. Thank
I
you.
didn't have my glasses on.
Where is Nicola? Nicola disappeared. That's too bad. But what's interesting in everything we've discussed today is we haven't quite addressed the issue that the title of this webinar asked in depth. So we shall make this the title of future ones too, because part of what we wanted to look at is how indeed the criminal justice system Oksana, which is what's so important, how the criminal justice system indeed would listen to children. Do they listen to children? How do they investigate children, not only as victims or as survivors, but also as witnesses of crimes? So while we spoke a great deal about caring about children, not mentioning all of the children who are suffering as we speak all over the world today. Mikola, welcome back. While we clearly have an extremely caring panel, and each one of the speakers invests a great deal of themselves in the work, not just as a job out there. We still have so many more questions to examine. So I wonder, let's take the time and ask each other. This is a dialogue time. And meanwhile, I will also look at the questions that the audience is having for us. Does any one of you want to respond to anyone else right now? Ask a question, comment. Please unmute yourselves. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. I wanted to ask, if whether the Ukraine has any structures in place in order to meet the children's psychological needs. For example, if you do have interventions available in the school, if you could extend the first responders to people outside of, to individuals, professions outside of trained clinical psychologists.
Mikola, Oksana?
I can start, or Mikola? Yeah. Yes, thank you, Michelle, for your question. Very, very important indeed. I can say that the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, is like the under her eagers. She's developing these programs, state program of mental health and psychological support. And as to my knowledge, within this program, or during this program, more than 60,000 psychologists received some additional qualification, integrating these special techniques, answering to this current situation. I'm sorry, I'm not a psychologist. Maybe I'm choosing not the correct terms. Yes. And I know that all of them are working. I came back to school. We also, in Ukraine, we have lots of non-governmental organizations providing this first psychological help for free. There are hotlines where you can call, I mean, like adults, of course. But my special interest is, of course, as I mentioned, it would be great to develop this protocol how to treat children returned, yes, from deportation, and not only from deportation. Frankly speaking, this topic is, of course, deportation. But I was talking, Mikola, but deportation is not the only one existing problem. Lots of children suffered from shelling, bombardment, continuous every day. And not only this, for example, several days ago, Kharkiv was without electricity. Kharkiv is more than 1,300,000 people thousands people. It's a huge town without electricity, without heating, without water, emergency, nothing helps, nothing works. Children used to live in this environment, but as Michelle mentioned, they can behave quite normal, but one day situation changes significantly. I know that lots of teachers who went abroad with this conflict, they provided some help to Ukrainian children taken by their parents abroad to Germany, Poland, etc. And they said that it was very difficult, and all the syndromes which Michelle mentioned, they faced. They said it's a huge responsibility, and we were not prepared to respond to those challenges. So it is indeed a problem.
Mikola, you mentioned, actually, you did mention a program. You did mention some programs, but you also mentioned the issue of de-indoctrination. You call it deprogramming. And I will, not only do we have some of it here, but there are programs. I will look for them and put on our center. There was a whole lot of, there were a whole lot of studies done during the gangs histories here and the cults, where people would abduct people to cults, how to deprogram. And so I will also try to provide some of that. But you did mention some of the programs,
Yeah,
Mikola.
it's on the one hand, it is a new phenomena, but on the other hand, we experienced this in Soviet Union. I've been a Soviet child, Soviet school child. I've been indoctrinated by Soviet propaganda, Soviet regime, and the same happened now on occupied territories. Children, why Russia force all children to attend schools? Because they have new Russian subjects, they have Russian teachers, they indoctrinating children there, and it's very easy to indoctrinate child because it's a year, 2 years, slowly you can convince them that only Russian regime is right, only Russian empire is a real empire, and the Russia is the victim, but whole the world is aggressor who wanna destroy Russia. And many kids who've been returned by Save Ukraine told us that, oh, they know, they believe that Russia is a good state, but everybody want to destroy them. That's why we need this programs for deprogramming children. And I mean that we are creating now, together with the Shevchenko University, with another our experts, we created a group of experts who are helping us to create this a new program based on the evidence-based program, and we are involving professionals. And if you can help us, as I understand, we will be happy, because we have not this experience how to help children who've been indoctrinated, to return them to reality and
Yes.
to help them to live normal life.
Yes, and I'm thinking also of Michelle's graphs, where you saw the anxiety and the aggression at the height. And clearly, these are issues that are absolutely critical for us to tend to. Irina Frankova is, oops, where are you? You just had a question and you disappeared. Wait, is there anything else you want to comment about each other? Because otherwise, I think the audience really wants to, to participate. Is that okay? Should I open it? Okay, so there are questions. Larry, I don't even know if your questions or simply a cry that we all cry now. What can we do to make humanity better? Because humanity is in the midst of such horribleness. So all I can respond is I know how you feel. I also believe that whatever we can do, we do, and that's how we continue to try to make the world a little bit, each one of us, a little bit a better place. But Blanche is asking, considering the situation in Gaza, where the entire society has been destroyed, where children are homeless, no school or medical support, as well as children being half-starved, what can we, the international community, do to assist these children who are suffering such trauma? Anybody wants to comment? Again, Blanche, thank you for your question. The truth is the whole of humanity is trying to answer it, I hope, right now. So, but I wonder, since we have experts here, go ahead, Michelle, you want to, go ahead.
Well, I think my answer on a personal level is not going to be very expert, because I have to say, just in response to that question, I think we all feel extremely helpless in the entire situation. Well, I do, in the entire situation that has evolved here. And quite frankly, I feel as though there's not very much that individuals on the ground can do. I certainly feel that it's out of our control. It's completely helpless in this situation.
I'm afraid that Larry's question and your question very much interact, indeed. We all feel helpless, probably because the task seems so huge. I've learned in my life to make the task manageable in little tasks. So we will continue. Thank you so much, Blanche, for bringing it up. We will have also webinars with Palestinian colleagues, experts, and continue to ask and attempt to answer these questions. Oksana, you were helping us translate one of the questions. Can you please do that? And Natalia, if you would please translate the questions that are only in Ukrainian, because some of us don't read Ukrainian as much as we love you. Go ahead, Oksana, can you?
Yeah, I can.
Irina, just a second. There is one more, just a second. There's a question from Irina Frankova, who is the chair of our Ukraine working group, to Michelle. What do you think about transdiagnostic interventions when they are targeting more than one symptom? Thank you, Irina.
Oh, absolutely. I think all treatments should not be unidimensional. I mean, there are people who treat specific symptoms, for example, with cognitive behavior therapy, treating anxieties. But I think most people's approach, and certainly mine, is a more holistic approach. See the child, see the family, see where it's coming from, if there are specific symptoms that we could easily remove, then I think that should happen. For example, I always tell my students, we're going to look at the dynamics of the family, we're going to look at the dynamics of the children. But if, for example, a child has enuresis, is wetting the bed, and we can get rid of that, let's do it immediately, because otherwise this child is going to have a developmental delay, cannot go to sleep with friends, is scared to go to sleep at night. But in general, that symptom is then going to be replaced with another symptom if we haven't actually attended to the core difficulty. And it's a particularly interesting question that Irene, I think, has asked, because it's very difficult to pinpoint which therapies would be most effective under conditions of armed conflict and war and terrorism. Because the answer to that is that almost anything can be normalized in abnormal times.
Yes, which is what we're talking about, indeed. And again, I don't want to create a war here, but I think what has not come up yet very clearly in our discussion is that what beyond symptoms, we're talking about the person of the child. We're talking about identity. And particularly when we talk about indoctrination, we're talking about an attempt to change one's identity, an attempt to, you call it come back to reality, but you're talking really about come back to your identity, right, Mikola? So we have to use more language than symptoms. And we have to talk so much more about it. And it ties in, Oksana, to your issue, to the definition. It's about who that person is. It's not just, so it's also how we write about it. So we have a lot of wonderful challenges to work with. Oh, I see, Oksana, you wrote here, Ola Melnik asked, how do you deal with trauma when a child does not speak after the war? How should we start organizing similar events for volunteers and teachers? Two brilliant questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Answer?
let me try to answer that since I remember one girl I worked with many, many years ago when I was in training. And she didn't utter a word for 6 months. And she trained me more than all of my training, professional training put together, because I had to really attend to what she was doing. With play, you talk about play therapy, etc. And after 6 months, she just came in one day and she said, today I can talk to you. And I think Orna spoke about it before, that you don't push the child. You're there. The message is, I'm here. And it's not even I'm waiting, but I'm simply here to be here with you and to receive anything, whatever your time, your time frame is. So I couldn't not be an expert for the moment, because that was one of my deciding moments in my training, because the whole class the whole group of young therapists was coming up with this idea and that idea and that idea and that idea, and I simply stayed with, I'm here. And so how should we start organizing similar events for volunteers and teachers? I think Eva, you want to join us for the moment, please? I see Irina. Robbie, can you let Eva in, please? What? No, not Eva. Eva, Eva Hofmanska of Yellow Flowers Project, who is doing this in collaboration with the International Center. Eva? She didn't leave. That's impossible. Is Eva there? Robbie?
It looks like she left.
We also have a question from Vladimir Popov, who
So let me just answer. Let me just answer, since she's not here, that when you spoke about volunteers, a large reason as to why we are doing it together, the two organizations, is that the Yellow Flowers Project relies on many legal volunteers to do the investigating and collect data. And we are doing these programs indeed to enable them to listen better, to be there better for all of these groups of witnesses. And this particular one was for children, but we also will have, we already had, and we will have more programs on tortures, on rape, on refugees, etc. All the groups of victims we are talking about. I'm disappointed that she left. Oksana, please help me be Eva.
Yeah, I'm. Thank you, El. I'm the co-founder of Sunflowers Foundation, so I can.
Well, here we go. So we have a real representative.
Yes. Actually, Project Sunflowers exists, and we are aiming to collect information, not evidence, because we are not investigators. We have volunteers who collect information, and there is a safe data collection of this information, which can be useful for national authorities and international criminal institutions and some others. And of course, thanks to you, as to my knowledge, Yael, the Project Sunflowers organized several webinars. You can go to the Project Sunflowers website and watch this video recording of amazing, absolutely fantastic webinars with Yael, and we also have had some other psychologists who share their knowledge and try to help fantastically. So as for organizing, I can suggest you, if your question is aiming how to organize, I'm sure that the best way is to invite professionals to any webinar which you can organize as a non-governmental organization. Frankly speaking, Olha, I don't know whether you are representing any civil society organization or maybe yourself. So we just the first step to go to the Sunflowers Project website, and after that you can contact me, you can contact Eva. I will write you my email. I'm sure that you can contact Center, which Yael is head of, and you can find this help in any possible.
Absolutely, and that's what we do. So absolutely, the door is totally open. There's one more question from Irina. I would like that to be at a different webinar, but let me answer it anyhow. You're talking about the Ongwen case in front of the ICC. You're talking about bringing on the topic of children born as a result of war-related sexual violence. Please comment in terms of law and how to support mothers. First of all, we already had 2 webinars on that in Rwanda, and I did the work in the Central African Republic for that as the reparation expert. As the ICC decided, which is wonderful in terms of our work, actually, it's the first time it's decided that a child born of rape is him or herself a victim, not just the mother who was raped. And this is new to international law, makes me terribly happy because I'm the one who put the notion of family and multi-generational issues into international law. So it's a great achievement for us. How to support mothers? Well, we've had, please, for now, watch the webinars we did on children born of war, children born of rape, that we did both with Bosnia and Rwanda and other places. But let's leave that for a very specific special webinar, unless Oksana, you want to add quickly one more, from your perspective, please.
You mean to this question? Yes.
If you want to, because I think I answered it, but go ahead.
Yeah, you absolutely answered. I just want to add that we have this problem in Ukraine.
Of course.
And this is very, I don't know, hidden problem. It's not obvious. And the problem of sexualized violence during the armed conflict is huge. And it's only we are only in the beginning of responding to this problem, because there are lots of discussions on deportation, lots of discussions on other topics, but the topic of children born because of rape during the armed conflict is hidden. And we should focus on this topic more. Yeah.
And we do have, please, Oksana, also look at those webinars, because we have worked with people from Bosnia, from Rwanda, etc. This is not a new issue for humanity.
No, I know. I'm ICL expert. I know. And the Office of the Ombudsman of Ukraine, actually, the staff, there is a special department working on these issues of children suffered because of war. And they raised this question during our several last discussions. And they're working in this dimension. But this topic is so uncomfortable, I can say, for society. So it should not be so uncomfortable. We should respond this challenge.
Now, there are several comments in the chat that are only in Ukrainian. So, Natalia, you want to translate them, please?
These are thanks.
Thank
Lots
you.
of them are thanks. Yes, gratitude. These are the words of gratitude. And maybe some comments by Natalia Dereviaga. She comments that she's commenting that currently lots of children who fled from the country with their parents abroad, they also have psychological problems, and they become deeper. And another words of gratitude for sharing of your thoughts.
Wonderful, thank you. And we do have a special webinar also on refugee children. So please check them out, and we will continuously add more and more. Israel now has refugee children, both from the south and from the north into the center. There isn't quite enough talked about it. I hope there's more research being done, Michelle. This is a provocation. This is a challenge. Because you were talking about the importance of structure and routine. And how do you do that?
Extremely difficult. Extremely
Yeah.
difficult, because children have been evacuated even several times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I am sorry, I cannot share the links to the sites. I don't know why chat does not allow me.
but we have it on our, it's not a problem. Yeah, okay. So let me again thank you from also in Eva's name. But Oksana, you can do that. and I just hope we continue and continue to continue. We see here from Vahid Momtaz. Hi, everyone. Oops, where did you put it? It came and went. Vahid, can you do it again? Send it to us and we will share it. It's hard to say goodbye on this because no matter how much we discuss this, oh, here, Irina. Thank you, Irina. She put the sunflowers chat. Okay, wonderful. So what can I say? There's so much more to talk about. Orna left also. I hope she feels better. The message did come through. Orna, you should be very proud. Thank you, Miriam. What can I say, Nicola? You're doing sacred work. So, and let's continue to do our best together.
Yeah.
I'd like to say thank you very much for the invitation to participate here. And I am leaving with a very heavy heart and feeling quite overwhelmed by when we've spoken about just two conflicts here and the tragedy of just even these two conflicts, which is an iota of what's really happening in the world, is actually overwhelming.
And
I really
Nicola,
want to wish our Ukrainian friends just all the best, really all the best.
Friends,
yeah,
thank you so much. You are special, and it is special time. We are going together through not easy times for us, and thank you so much for your efforts and everything you are doing. And we need your expertise, you need your professionalism, and it is very important for us. Thank you so much.
this is what we are here for. So anytime, please. Go ahead, Oksana, please.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues and dear friends. For me, it was very fruitful, the huge benefit of this presentation for all of us. I would like just to add that there is a rule of first aid. You continue until the person will be alive. And I want to say that we will continue to return in Ukrainian children and helping Ukrainian children, and not only Ukrainian children. If I may, I would like to help children in Israel as well. I have so many friends in Israel, and I will be delighted to help. So we have to continue and go further and keep strength and belief. Thank you very much for all your
And my bigger dream is, you know, just in the center, we have a working group on Ukraine, a working group on Haiti, Rwanda, Israel, on and on and on nuclear exposed people. I mean, that's another webinar we had that's directly related to Zaporizhia and Ukraine. Come on. We've been on, and I hope one day we will get all together and in person, and not only be able to exchange hugs, but yes, and Efia also, thank you. And yeah, so let's hope for that too. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Yael. Thank you very much for doing this.
And if there's any idea you want for webinar, we do it. So just an email away. And you know, we're talking about Ukraine. I want to do share that. We gave to, you know, the International Center also gives awards twice a year. And in March, we gave 2 awards to wonderful Ukrainians. One is Vadim. Oh, why am I not thinking of his second name? Irina, what's Vadim's second name? Come on. Vadim Faber, who is the head of a wonderful project, Solomonica, in Dnipro. It started as a Jewish project, and he opened it up to everyone. So he received an award of excellence. And the other one we gave is to, to Alexander Shur, who did the movie Bucha. It's a fantastic film, and we will have a special webinar on that too. And we continue. Mikola, I have a feeling you might be in that nominations too. So
Thank you. Thank you. I love you, friends, and hug you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Oksana, please give Eva my hug. She should have been part of the.
For sure.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.